Hi, folks. We're Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I just want to highlight, and I hadn't realised this until a couple of days ago when some numbers sort of came across a couple of the videos I was looking at and a couple of the news flashes, that I sat down and added together all the different categories and types of visa that exist, the Australian government has put out, and then added together all the numbers, put the all numbers that were on these visas. And this includes student visas, temporary work visas, and there's also other visas Australia has, such as you can come to Australia on a vacation, but you're permitted to work, a certain amount of hours a week. So this is like backpackers and travellers can go around the outback regions or the more rural regions of Australia, and they can, if they can find work, maybe working in cafes or I don't know, picking fruit or anything, whatever. And so there's visas for students who say graduated from a university or a college, and that's a whole area of corruption and scams in itself. And then they get to stay on in Australia on the basis they're so highly educated. And of course, it's the main scam, corrupt basket case countries such as India and Pakistan and whatever that supply, and other places supply these sort of people. But there's also a huge number of just people coming on vacation. And so when you add all the categories together, including visa overstays and assuming a sort of a churn rate of people coming and going, you're looking at a nearly 20% or more, slightly more even, of the total Australian population made up of these temporary visa, come vacationers, come students, come short-term skilled temp worker, and all these visas. There's got to be like a million different types of fucking visa that are out there that people can come in on. And also, now this is how the government uses to hide. No, we've reduced the number of people coming in. We've listened to the voter, we've listened to the electorate, and we've reduced the number. But no, they haven't. They've just reclassified them on some other different fucking visa. So anyway, this is the thing that so. Now you say, well, hold on a minute. If there's 20%, give or take, of the total Australian population are in these visas, then what's wrong with that? Now there's also people who've been given sort of permanent residency visas, but aren't yet citizens. And a lot of these third world country people have been fast tracked, given fast track visas. So there's a whole nother category there, also in the millions. So we could be looking, in fact, we are looking at a situation where, 25 to even 30% of the population are on some form of, third world peasants are in some form of visa. Now, there also was gold visas issued. These numbers wouldn't be large, but if people had money to invest in Australia, the assumption was they would invest in a business. But when these people come from third world countries, they're not coming to invest in Australia or in the Australian economy. They're coming to buy up swathes of real estate or start a real estate development company that, the Chinese were big on this, that employs only Chinese people. It's horribly corrupt. They pay kickbacks. That, they bring all the corruption and all the bad habits that they had in their own country. They're not working in a market economy or a high trust market economy. So they come to a place like Australia that was once anyway a high trust market economy, and they play all their silly low trust, corrupt, scammy games that they played in their host country. So they bring their bad habits with them, and they employ only other Chinese, or in the cases Indian companies, only other Indians, and only spend money with other Indians, and so on and so forth. They come to loot the white man's money, but not to contribute. So there's now. How big is this? Now, I've mentioned, the closer you get to downtown Sydney and some suburbs, but particularly the closer you get to downtown Sydney, the more or the fewer white people you see, and the less you hear English being spoken. And, given I'm quite a bit taller than, not all, but most of these third world peasants that come in, I can see as I'm standing cheek to jowl in the train carriage, I can see what's on their phones, because they're all on their fucking mobile phones, and none of them are looking at an English language on there. Not that I can see an English language. The young brown and black men have got this absolute obsession with porn that involves blonde white chicks. Why aren't they looking at women from their own country? Why aren't Indian guys looking at Indian chicks, or Filipino guys Filipino? No, these brown and black people, they universally only want blonde white chicks. And the porn that they look at is it's not tame. We're not talking mid-level temperature porn here. We're talking fucking XXX rated and all this sort of stuff. So which they seem to do with almost any sort of realization of the inappropriate or the nature of that behavior or its vulgarity. But anyway, coming back to the issue of the amount of people in Australia on these visas, and I'll get down into some more detail in just a moment, but I was in the city a couple of days ago and took the long walk around, which I like to do, so it gives me a sort of street view of things. And every time I came to a walk light on the street, and I had several blocks I needed to walk, every time I came, I was the only fucking white guy on the pedestrian crossing. So I'm looking around, all is Chinese and Indians. Not that many black people, like a few Filipinos, Indonesians, the wider Asian diaspora, but no one's talking in English. I'm the only, I mean, maybe they can talk in English, but they're talking amongst themselves, so they slip back into the home country language, very willing. And they're, most of them, not all, but most of them are, especially many 4'6" tall women. There was a few South American women, because I'm Spanish, so I could pick that up. And excuse me. So just looking at all that, I'm the only white guy. So, and given that none of them are speaking English, and again on the phones, the amount of people wearing burqas and so on, that would suggest, well, not suggest, it clearly screams that there's a majority of non-white, non-citizen people concentrating in the cities. Now, a lot of them, I took a walk through a food arcade, which I had to do a bit of a detour around. So I walked down this food arcade, which is, I don't know, probably 250 meters, food shops and takeout food stores on either side. And there's not one fucking white person in there. Pretty much all the people in there were a few Indians, mostly Asians, mostly sort of Chinese. And they were, well, not Chinese, Filipinos, again, Asians, but they were, the amount of midgets, and you see them walking around. Why would you import a 4'6" tall person that speaks little or no English, who's clearly got serious health issues? The lower back and the knees and the ankles and the feet are in bad shape. If that person's been given citizenship or anything like that, or any access to the medical facility, they would be a huge drain on the medical. You just look at them, and they're just a walking case of I need lots of medical care. Why would you let someone like that come in? I mean, no sensible person would. But anyway, that's the number of people. But another thing that particularly stuck out was the thick end of 1 million, or maybe 750,000, give or take, and it'll depend on the season, but the amount of short-term tourist visas. Now, these are, things like 60, 90-day tourist visas from these third world countries, India and so on, Pakistan. Now, these people aren't tourists. This is the point that is particularly important. What happens with these, especially these Indians, is they all have these takeout food shops and all these businesses, and they just need slave fucking labor. And so these people falsely claim they're relatives of Sanjeev or something, and they come out and they work for 3 months in Sanjeev. Maybe they overstay, because the Indians, the subcontinent people are pretty bad for overstays. But they work in his shop for money paid under the counter, and so this becomes a ready supply of very cheap, borderline slave labor for Sanjeev and his takeout fucking chicken shop, or Suleiman and his kebab shop or something. But the thing here is that this is a mass influx of workers illegitimately posing as tourists. They're not fucking tourists. They're slave labor being imported. And this is, again, in a high trust society, if someone says, well, I'm a tourist, I'm here to, check out the Sydney Opera House and go here and there and look at the kangaroos or something. Yeah, okay, well, that's it. And if someone from Britain or, Western Europe or a high trust or higher, or what once were high trust countries, says that, then okay, well, if that's what you said, why not? But when these third, low trust third world corrupt scam countries, such as India, they're not coming into, sure, they'll tick the box. They're going to look at the kangaroos, but they're coming in to work at, again, Sanjeev's takeout chicken shop. So, or whatever business Sanjeev has. So this is a mass influx of workers, and you see these people downtown. Now, just to sort of illustrate, I don't know, to some extent, what I'm talking about, if the immigration authorities went through these places, they would be netting. I mean, they just wouldn't have the resources to arrest and deport all the people they would pick up if they did a run in downtown Sydney. But I was on a train. In fact, yesterday I was on this train, and the ticket inspectors came in to make sure you had a valid train ticket. And the carriage I was getting, where I was again the only white person, the train carriage I was on, there was this mass movement of people. Once they realised the ticket inspectors were there, suddenly all these brown and black and whatever people suddenly jumped up and started running for the back of the train. Now it was on one of the inner city train loops, so it's only a couple of minutes till the next train station comes up where they can just jump out, wait till another train comes along, get on that. Yeah. So, but it illustrated to me the amount of people who are probably in the country illegitimately, working illegitimately, and who are not paying. They won't even fucking pay the train, for the train tickets or the public transport tickets. And the carriage that was quite full when I got into it almost emptied out. They ran off, and that to me just illustrates, again, in a high trust society you don't do that, but in the places where they come from and the sort of things that they do is standard and normal and so on, then that's the sort of behavior they think is acceptable, and they think there's no, they think gaming the system and so on makes them, hey, look how smart I am, I looted the white man's treasury, look at me. So, but coming back to the temp work visa or student visa and so on. So you get the student visa says we can work 10 hours a week, for example, 10 hours a week you can work, or whatever the hours may, 15. But they come to Australia or to any first world country, in Australia in this case, and they'll register under, and they'll go for work at some Indian labour hire company, and they'll get put out under different names. So they don't go to college at all. It's a bullshit ghost college. And they'll work, 50, 60 hours a week, slave labor type stuff. And they'll be put out to, today it's a cleaning job, tomorrow it's flipping burgers, the next day it's, I don't know, cooking chicken kebabs or something, this sort of stuff. And they're working all the time. Now, how many, as I walked around the again, the food areas, and how is it that in downtown Sydney, multiple pedestrian crossing points, I'm the only white person? Not that there's a few or half of them are white. I'm the only white person. Why am I the only white person on the train carriage? I mean, fuck. And in addition to that, none of the people around me are speaking in English. Which means I would suggest they're recent arrivals, and so this is the scale of the thing. So in the cities, as I walk further around and so on, I'd say a maximum 15% of the working population. I mean, you sometimes get some senior citizens around, white senior citizens, but in terms of the working population. I would say a maximum of 15% are white. Now, if they're brown or black or something like that, but they're speaking with an Australian accent, then you can reasonably assume they've been in the country for quite a while, maybe came as children, or certainly came, say, before the age of 10. There are some, if you look at, say, Indians, even if they arrived at a young age, but they only speak Indian in the house, you can still hear that Indian accent coming across. Same with, say, the Arabs. Even if they're born in Australia, but they only speak Arabic in the house, you can still pick up the Arabic accent in the way they speak English. But there's enough of an Australian twang on the accent to say, okay, you've been here for quite a while. Maybe you're a naturalized citizen or something like that. But that's not what I'm hearing around the place. I'm not hearing people talking like that. So this is an interesting sort of phenomenon that if there was to be a clampdown on, say, right, all visa or all mass immigrant or mass, temp immigrant, whatever, or visas, that something in the order of between 4 and 5 million people would be evicted from Australia, overnight, on that basis. And if we look at the harm these people are doing to the economy, they're coming here to work, supposedly be students for ghost colleges that don't exist. They're coming as skilled work visas to what? Flip burgers? That's a skilled worker. So, they're coming to be, a tourist visa on 10 hours a week work, but in fact they're working, 100 hours a week or so. These sorts of, again, for slave wages, they're artificially propping up businesses that are not viable in any sense of the word, and they're depressing wages and taking jobs away from Australians. Now, a lot of these people are also able to get jobs under quota systems, in whether it be government or big, the skilled work visa and so on. Now, if a company employs 100 people, but 50 of those jobs are subject to race, gender quotas, then that means 50 white people, particularly white men, have been denied employment. It's quite different if they double the amount of jobs, and then give half of the increase to non-white people. That's, that wouldn't really affect white people at all. But that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. If there is any expansion in jobs at all, it's all going to non-white people, such as Indians in the public service and so on and so forth. But it brings home, I think, the extent of it that's going on in Australia. I had an idea of that in the overall total population, there's over 20% of the people in Australia are on some sort of temporary visa, and these visas are being horribly exploited in areas such as, there's only a 10-hour limit, but they're working multiple jobs through these scam labour hire firms. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.